Jordan Cooper, and I play the role of Carl.
I'm Michaela Gibson, and I play Nona.
I'm Yaki. I'm writer, director, editor, producer.
So how did you get the idea for the film, and how did it all come together?
Several things. One, I grew up in the church, and so I was exposed to sort of the good and the bad side of it. And I know a lot of people that have been molested, not just by clergymen, but just, in general. And so those stories, as a teenager hearing those stories, they sort of always just sort of lived in me. I didn't know I would make a film about them. I didn't know what I would do with them, but I just knew they were there. And one day I was watching TV and I came across a documentary called Deliver Us from Evil. And in that documentary, you saw a priest who had molested, I think, 50 or more kids. And it was interesting because for me, that was the first time I had really seen a pedophile. They didn't excuse him, but he was humanized. You sort of understood the backstory. You understood his own past of sexual abuse. You got a sense that he was told to be silent, that he was told that this is something he shouldn't talk about, and so he turns around and he sort of inflicts the same pain on others. And then on the flip side of that, you also saw the family, and you saw how, because of the abuse on the children, how the families sort of fell out with one another, how the children were still suffering with the trauma from the abuse. And so I wanted to sort of tell a story that entailed all of those things, plus the things that I had known from my past as well. So a lot of stuff. Quite honestly, I don't like auditions. I hate casting sessions. So over the years, I've sort of built up an ensemble of actors that I use. This is my wife, and I literally wrote the part of Nona for her. I pulled from people that I know. Eugene, I called him on the phone, who plays Bishop Anderson. Miss Hall had worked in the play with her. I called her on the phone. But I knew I needed a 16-year-old, and I didn't really have that in my arsenal. And so I had a casting director here, Adam Dietrich, and Elliot Gilbert, and then I had a casting director in San Antonio, Nikki Young, and he came in. He was like the third person I think that I saw. And I think I knew immediately that he was Carl, but of course we kept auditioning. I think we auditioned for a month, so I saw a lot of people.
So as such a young actor, is there anything you had to do specifically to prepare yourself for such a sensitive topic?
I did a lot of research, and I watched this Oprah special, and I sat there and I watched that special over and over again, and I would just look into their eyes, and there was so much pain and guilt. They still forgave, but they never forget, and some of them didn't even forgive. So as they went on with their life with their wives or their fiancés or their partners or their husbands or whatever, they went on, and life went on, but they still had that pain, that little box that was still inside them. And I felt like my mission was to convey that message and show that in my eyes and tell the story without basically having any words. I feel like it was a duty for me. I had all these people on my shoulders, and it was my job to tell their story through this character. So
there was one scene in particular that really got to me, and that's the scene where he hits himself and his dad, and they sort of all collapse behind the couch. I literally cried during that scene. I don't cry, but I cried during that scene because even beyond sexual abuse, this is also about the absence of a father. And I didn't have my dad. I didn't grow up with my dad. And just, seeing Jolly grab him and say, "I'm here now. I love you. I'm sorry that I didn't do what I was supposed to do as a man and as a father." That really got to me because I think at its core, that's sort of how he ended up in Bishop Anderson's hands, because he didn't have a father. He didn't have a father figure. He didn't have that love. And because of that, he's looking for love in all the wrong places. And that happened. And so I think that scene for me was probably the most difficult one. Well, he says I have to forgive myself, right, in order for me to move on. I think Jamin says the line is, "I thought you said God could forgive anything," and then he says only the things you can forgive yourself for. And I think a lot of times we carry things around with us because I'm so dirty, I've done this thing, I could never forgive myself for it, and that in itself holds you down. Because the truth of the matter is, like I said, God can only do what you allow him to do. And if you haven't let it go, then he can't come in because you're holding on to it. And I think, for me, the moment Bishop Anderson could admit that he was wrong, could admit, and that's why the baptism scene, for me, that's one of my favorite scenes in the film, because I think that's where he's purging himself and he's able to go back and face the person that abused him. And when he faces that person, he's able to start not only to forgive that person, but to forgive himself. And that's why I think when Jamin comes and gets him and he puts that gun, it's like, I've forgiven myself for this thing, and I need to be punished. I can admit that I did something wrong, and it's only then that he can move forward. And I think that's another thing that has to happen. Yeah, you did this thing, and yeah, it was bad. Forgive yourself, get the help you need, move forward, and don't do it again. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Let it go.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's why the father is, he's such an, it's not just anger. I mean, it comes off as anger, but it's so much guilt inside of him, and that's just how he, knows how to express it. But he feels bad because he hasn't been a father, and he allowed a man who he trusted, who he thought had his son's best interest at heart, come in and be the father that he should have been, all the while the man was abusing his son. And so I think everybody there's guilt all over the place. The thing that I wanted to do with this film was not point fingers at any one person. I think we all play a part in this, right? We need to be more watchful over our children. We need to watch that. We can't make our pastors or our ministers our gods, because they're not. Mm-hmm. There is only one God. And the minute you start making a man your God, the minute he betrays you, it shatters you, mm-hmm. because he shouldn't have been your God in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so there's just guilt all the way around him. So I think everybody in this film has to get that stuff off of their shoulders in order for them to move forward.
That's what I like about the end. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, and even in his shorts, he never wrapped everything up in a pretty bow and was like, here, this is the end. It's not like that, And to me, in the end, it's not the end, at the end.
Reviews are great. We want a distribution deal. We want all of that. But quite honestly, if this film can touch somebody, if it can heal someone, if it can get us talking about this so that this can stop happening, that's what means the most to me.
I mean, being Yaki's wife, I see it from both sides. And so when he's working, he doesn't think about topping, the next thing, or what people expectations. He doesn't really think about that. He really, I feel like it's divine intervention. He gets these stories and he's working and he's focused on the story. He's a true artist. He's an artist first. And that's what I admire about him. I'm not saying that because his wife. I admire artists who remember why they do the work. And it's a bigger reward for all artists when they touch people, and it, not people saying you're great, you're good, oh, you're wonderful, but when people say, you know what, you made me think about what I did.
You see, nothing good has ever been accomplished without bloodshed. And you want to be great.